Hello and welcome to the Single Malt Frontier, where we explore the edge of innovation in American single malt whiskey. Here on the show, we do a little bit of tasting and a lot of talking. Usually we talk about whiskey, but the best thing about whiskey is the conversations that we get to have along the way, and we get to talking about a little bit of everything. I'm your host, Doug, or as I'm known around the internet, Demi Tastes. I'm joined today, as usual, by my co-host, Phil, of the Ranger's Respite and of the Whiskey Lodge. And we have a special guest today, very special guest, Caitlin Bartlemay, Master Distiller of Clear Creek Distillery, who makes McCarthy's and also of Hood River Distillers. And I'm beyond excited because this is the episode where we finally get to reveal what we've been teasing for 8 months. We are doing a barrel pick of McCarthy's Oregon single malt whiskey. And I haven't been allowed to say what it is for so long that it's going to be hard for me to talk about it. So bear with me. So it is a fully rum cask matured from beginning to end, 6.5 years old, cask strength, barrel pick of McCarthy's Oregon single malt. I first tasted this when it was 3.5 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Joseph O'Sullivan sent me a sample based on some interest that I had expressed in doing a barrel pick and of an interest in doing something particularly interesting for a barrel pick. So I've been following the development of this barrel for 3 years now and gone through the bureaucracy, and we are finally at very nearly the finish line. When this video comes out, it will be about 1 week away from when you can buy this barrel pick. You'll be able to buy that on Hood River Distillers' site, which is, we'll get the URL for you later. And with no further ado, I would like to bring Caitlin Bartlemay to talk about a bit about the brand of McCarthy's, in case you don't know, and a bit about what makes this barrel so special. So, Caitlin, welcome.
Well, thank you again for having me on. I'm terribly excited about this barrel pick with the Whiskey Lodge. It has been a labor of love getting us to launch day, and I think I'm just as excited as you guys are. So I also love the callback to how long we've really been honestly working on this project with you, because you've been keeping an eye on this barrel for a really long time, and now is the time for it to be harvested and to be bottled and released. So let's talk a little bit about McCarthy's. It was Steve McCarthy who founded Clear Creek Distillery in 1985, who first decided to make an American single malt. He had been inspired by Smoky Peaty Isla single malts while he was traveling the world. And with all the parts and pieces existing within Portland to actually pull off an Oregon peated single malt, he came back home from his trip and decided, why don't I reach out to some of these small craft malt houses that had popped up with the beginning of the craft brewing boom in Portland, Oregon, and actually see what I can do. Unfortunately, at the time, it was too big of an ask for those craft malt houses. And so the only option that he had in order to do a smoky peaty whiskey was to import that peat malted barley from Scotland, which is what we still do today. So it's made with 100% heavily peated malt that we import from Scotland. We then brew it with a brewery partner, because Clear Creek Distillery is more a winery than your average distillery is. We actually don't have any grain handling facilities. We don't have a brewery on site. We are a winery with a distillery attached, because we're processing over 1 million pounds of Pacific Northwest fruit into fruit brandies and liqueurs all year long. And so we work with brewery partners. During the original release with Clear Creek Distillery launching, or first distilling McCarthy's in 1994, first releasing it in 1998, the early years were all brewed with the Widmer brothers in Portland. And then I think 8 years ago now, maybe even 9 years ago, we moved the production to Double Mountain Brewing here in Hood River, and the distillery moved to Hood River shortly after. So, when we're talking about the ethos of Clear Creek Distillery, we're all about the locality of where we are. We want to work with local businesses as much as we can. We want to work with local fruit, all of that stuff. So in bringing the partnership to Double Mountain and also moving to Hood River, we're 5 minutes away from the pears, and we're about 2 miles away from the brewery that brews the wash. So we're excited to be a greater part of our community here in Hood River, and always are looking for opportunities to work within our local Pacific Northwest community as well. So that's kind of the backstory on McCarthy's. It was originally aged for only 3 years in 100% Oregon oak. And that was the first release in 1998. In 2021, we actually expanded the McCarthy's line for the first time to include a 6-year-old aged in 100% Oregon oak. And then in subsequent years, we have added a Pedro Jimenez sherry cask finish to the 6-year, as well as a limited release of an Oloroso sherry cask finish. And the website that Doug mentioned, where all of this and the rum McCarthy's is what we've been calling the project behind the scenes to make things short. That will all be available on www.hrdspirits.com. You'll be able to find the link there to the products that we have available online, and as well as the Rum McCarthy's project. Yeah, this is going to be a fun one to talk about.
So I'm just going to put that up on the screen so that's
perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I know. I was like showing my like elder millennial roots in that I included the www because like nobody does that anymore. But you know what? I'm old.
You know what's funny? There are still some websites where that actually will cause an error. So hey, it's worth including.
That's funny.
But those are websites that are designed badly. So
Sure.
Anyway, yeah. So one more thing before we get into tasting notes, because that is one of the great things that we're going to be doing today, is we're going to finally taste through this thing and tell you what it tastes like so that you know what you're buying. We may also, did we mention price? We may also mention price.
Yeah, no, we're going to talk about the price. We're going to talk about the approximate number of 12 bottle cases we're going to possibly get out. And then we can also get into the nitty gritty details. We can actually just kind of dive into it now, really. This was first barreled in December of 2017. So as we get closer and closer to December of 2024, we're well over 6.5 at this point in time. I think as of a couple of days ago, it was like 6.69 years or something like that. So we've gone past the 6.5 year mark, but the labels were approved for 6. So you'll see 6 on the label, 6.5 on the medallion. But who knows what the actual decimal will be by the time we get it pulled from the barrel and actually in bottles. We're looking at somewhere between 12 and 15 12-bottle cases for this release. So it's going to be very limited. And the rum barrel in question is an ex-Casa Magdalena Rum Cask that we got from Westward Whiskey. So it's been a really fun adventure to taste the development of McCarthy's without the Oregon oak expression to go along with it. And so not only are you getting kind of, in my mind, almost a naked McCarthy's experience, but the really wonderful notes that Casa Magdalena rum layers over the top of it is really exceptional. So this release is going to be an experience and definitely worth picking up.
Yep. All right. I'm going to put the barrel pick description in a banner too, because it is kind of a mouthful. Hopefully this shows up well. And hopefully I didn't get any of that wrong. And it's a little bit too long for one line, but that's what it is, right? McCarthy's Oregon single malt, 6.5 year rum cask matured, distilled December 2017, bottled approximately August or September 2024 is what we're hoping. Do I have that right?
Sorry, you're going to have to say that again. I just like majorly
just
blanked out. I'm so excited about this that I'm just like, the fact that we're actually going to talk about this out loud, like my brain just kind of had a mini stroke. Like, this is so secret. Why are we talking about it out loud? Like, so sorry.
I have the same feeling. Yeah. So 6.5 years bottled in approximately August 2024, possibly September, right? That's what I put up on screen there.
We're as of the date of the recording, I'm going to guess it's probably going to be an early September bottling.
Okay. So I'll just real quick change that to say approximately September. And then we'll be accurate.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, we are all like losing our minds right now, literally, because we've been talking about this amongst ourselves for 8 months and going, never shall we ever verbally say a word about this because we will screw up and say it on air. And every time I've talked about it on air, I've been so careful not to say any details. But today's the day. Today we get to say that's the thing right there. That's what the barrel pick is. We're super excited. Just can't tell you how excited we are, really. So one more thing before we get into
a little bit of quick detail about Casa Magdalena, because it is kind of a cool story. So Rum itself is actually made in partnership between Casa Magdalena and Westward Whiskey. The sugarcane is and the rum itself is made in Guatemala, but the sugarcane is actually grown in a family mill, or grown in a volcanic valley, and then milled by the same family that grows it. So it's nearly an estate rum, but they're using what the if you're talking about the island tradition of molasses, or of rum making, which is probably what most people are familiar with, it would be the masaquite. So the molasses that hasn't had any sugars removed from it, that's going to be what they're actually using. Depending on other circles, you might call it high test molasses. And at the end of the day, it's sugarcane that's been grown in this really rich mineral soil. And then they have only reduced the amount of water in it and turning some of those sugars and caramelizing them by turning it into molasses. But it's still an incredibly rich sugar source. So you're getting some of the components of what you might think is a little bit of a darker rum, but you're also getting some of those light rum notes as well. So you're getting some of those roasted marshmallow, toasted marshmallow notes, but you also still have access to some of those light and grassy notes as well. So really interesting as far as the interplay that you're going to get between the maltiness and the roastiness, as well as the smoky and earthy qualities of a McCarthy's that hasn't seen any Oregon oak contribution.
Yeah. The coolest thing about that description to me, I think more than anything else, I just got back from Iceland. So hearing volcanic valley is super cool to me. Right. And just thinking about what that contributes to the whiskey is just such a cool thing. Like that adds a layer for me. So we've done our official tasting notes, which we're not going to be looking at as we do this. Totally. Right. We've done our reviews. We've done our official tasting notes, and I didn't know that detail actually. So I was totally unspoiled on that. So I'm going to be looking for that, especially today. Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be really cool to look for. So before we go, I just wanted to say, like, what's this bottle going to look like? Right. So I know you have an example for us. Anyone who's seen a McCarthy's barrel pick before, this is going to look really familiar.
So it's going to, there's a bit of reflection. I don't know. Let's see what I can do there. It's the light's a little bit more merciful. So it's going to be a Black Label McCarthy's single malt release. And then my thumb is covering the special barrel release that this particular one represents, because as a part of the Whiskey Lodge, and this being a Whiskey Lodge barrel pick, the Whiskey Lodge will have their own special medallion that'll go on this standard McCarthy single barrel release bottle. So the information on the bottom of the bottle will have the barrel date. It'll have when it was pulled, or it will have the date that it was bottled. It will also have the proof. So we can give you an estimate proof as of right now on what the barrel is, but the official proof that will be handwritten on every single label the day of bottling, we won't get until literally the morning of bottling. So I can tell you right now that the proof is going to be anywhere between 112 and 115. And like we said earlier, between 12 and 15, 12 bottle cases. So it's going to be a limited release, but it's worth grabbing a bottle or two of, because it's very special. And this is every drop of rum McCarthy's that we currently have in the barrel room.
All right. So I've updated the banner.
Indicated that it's time for us to quit messing around and actually start smelling and tasting it.
So I've updated the banner. So all of that information is now available on screen in case you want, in case you buy with your eyes, and the kind of buying with your eyes is the geeky knowing what it says on the spec sheet. So that's the spec sheet for you. That's what this release is going to be. So now let's get that off the screen, and let me just show you one last thing before we do the tasting notes, and feel free to get into your tasting notes and start forming your ideas and what you'd like to say. But I want to show the sticker, right?
Yes.
So this has been a labor of love that has been a combo effort between me and Phil and ChatGPT Plus and graphic designer at HRD has helped us come up with this design for the label.
Yeah. Shout out to Tina. She's been doing the Lord's work on this one.
Yeah, super helpful. Can't thank her enough, really. And to get to this point, it feels so real now that we have a sticker, we have a podcast logo. So you see this sort of simplified podcast logo that's up there. But if you are following the podcast on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Podbean or wherever else you listen to your podcast, you have seen this version of the logo as well, which is a lot more ornate. It's got the barley field and the lodge in the background. So one reason for the lodge, that house there that we're calling the lodge, is actually because this barrel pick that we're doing, and really this podcast came out of the Whiskey Lodge in the first place. So this is a collaboration between this podcast, the Single Malt Frontier, as well as the community that Phil and I are admins of, which is the Whiskey Lodge. So the admin team has been involved in this barrel pick almost as early as I could possibly get them involved, because it started with, as I said, that sample that we did when the barrel was 3.5 years old. And I said, ooh, cool, this is special. Here, guys, what do you think about this spec? Would you want to do this as a barrel pick? You can't say what it is. You can't tell anybody that it exists, but do you want to do this? And when it's time, we'll do it, right? And then about November, we started collecting interest, right? And people were like super excited. But it speaks volumes about McCarthy's that I didn't tell anyone what this is, and they said, the people at McCarthy's are giving you a special barrel. Hell yeah, we want a bottle of it, right? So, yeah. All right, enough fluff. Let's do tasting notes.
It's not fluff. It's just like, it's exciting to actually be able to talk about it because it's been so long in the making. So I hope people can get the sense that everybody on this recording is essentially vibrating with the like joy, the idea that we are finally this close to the finish line and getting to share the actual liquid in the bottles with you guys, because it's really exceptional.
I had to separate all my glasses on the shelf over here because, doing the ADHD twitch was making them rattle.
So I'll go ahead and lead off. There's definitely a lot of like the original expectations of McCarthy's, right? It's not going to let down as being something other than McCarthy's.
Yep.
So you're getting that kind
smoke.
of meandering smoke, right? But that really big hit of, burnt vanilla or burnt orange peel and vanilla is definitely less. Like there's definitely some vanilla there, but it's a different vanilla. And the citrus profile, because it's an ex-rum cask and it's also an American oak ex-rum cask, the citrus profile is a lot different on this. I don't know about you guys, but you definitely get kind of like citrus blossoms and that like touch of like salted lime almost. Like there's a salinity to the nose, and that's very, very common with McCarthy's, is that salinity on the nose. But it's just kind of like you took a little bit of lime zest and rubbed it in some salt to kind of like break open the pores and express those oils.
There's also a really nice earthiness that's sort of, I've come to recognize as being sort of buried in the core of McCarthy's. That's really much closer to the fore on this.
Yeah, for me, I'm getting like a minerality, like a stream a little bit, like rocks, like wet rocks by a stream.
Mm-hmm.
And like that, I think because it's over 6 years old, like that smokiness has sort of like softened to the point where it feels like wispy, like you said, but like a little bit more of like an incense kind of thing instead of a spiky like Isla kind of like young Isla smoke.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten a lot softer and nicer, and it's letting the rest of that earthy profile sort of come to the front.
But it's also kind of like it's like a grassy earthy, right? It's very much alive. Sometimes when we talk about peat and peat expression, we use the word forest loam a lot, which is, it's still very much alive, but it's a different kind of alive. It's the alive of decay, right? This is the alive earthiness, but it's alive with life, right? That's the difference.
Yeah, for me, it's like mossy, like on those river rocks, right? There's moss on them,
I get a little bit of like
I'm gonna dive in and taste it first.
Yeah, we could do palate.
Okay. I was going to say, on the very tail end of the nose, I get kind of like shortbread with coconut on the top.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a toasted apricot, like right on the mid palate.
Mm-hmm. No, there's a bunch of fruits in here. Like you do, like because of the greenness, like it kind of leads you into some green apple, but there's also like some jackfruit and a little bit of like toasted coconut.
There's also that pepperiness that I like.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
after a
plays
sip,
in really well with that, like that citrus note. It's a nice balance of like, because I don't know about you guys, but I always think there's like a hint of lemon in freshly cracked pepper. There's like that just
yeah,
spike of lemon in it. And so it's like cracked black pepper, and then that leads into that lime, lemon, citrus note that kind of follows through.
yeah, it's like pepper goes really well with lemongrass. Like I think it's that kind of vibe, right?
Mm-hmm.
After taking a sip, I definitely get the pepper and also like a little bit of the shortbread cookies on the nose, like more than my initial sort of take at it.
It's got a like heartbreakingly long finish.
Oh
Like
yeah.
take a sip.
When's the last time I took a sip?
I should probably start actually getting a stopwatch, because I like one of the things when you talk about hallmarks of the brand, and certainly hallmarks of my personal blending style, like I get angry if the finish doesn't go for a while. Like if I taste anything and I taste it, and then the minute that it's gone, it just like disappears from your palate into nothing. Ooh, I have a bugaboo about that. Like it's like short finish, medium finish, long finish, no finish. Whoa, I get really mad at no finish. But this one, I've been talking now for, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds. I'm still getting like lingering flavors even through my exposition, right? Even as I'm breathing out over my tongue, I'm still getting flavors. I'm still getting things like toasted marshmallow. I'm still getting things like crushed rose petals. There's like floral notes that are coming through, and like a light caramel, like not a dark caramel, not even a caramel candy. Like just as the syrup is really starting to change color, like you get that little bit of sweetness, that brightness, but just like a hint of that caramel flavor, that molasses kind of chewiness.
Yeah, there's a little bit of like creme brulee topping at like the end of the palate.
Mm-hmm.
And then during
Oh
that
yeah.
long finish, like it develops like that sort of mineral water aftertaste,
Mm-hmm.
like a nice like Pellegrino kind of thing. It just like, and it keeps evolving. It's like it's got a texture, it's chewy, it's, effervescent, it's sweet. And like the funny thing for me is like McCarthy's the very first single barrel I had, which I always have at hand, right? That's this one right here. That hit me like musty library books and super bitter and like pop rocks and like just the tiniest hint of sweetness. So in some ways, like I'll taste this and I'll go like, this is a super sweet McCarthy's, but then I'll try it against like another like a Lafroig or something and go like, oh, that's still McCarthy's bitter. Like that's still that thing that I love about that mineral, earthy bitterness. Like this one's not quite musty library books, but like it's still got that DNA to it. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Oh no, it definitely feels and tastes like a McCarthy's, but it's so much fun to taste it without the addition of the Oregon oak. Not that I love the Oregon oak, but it's such a rare opportunity to taste it without the Oregon oak, and to taste it, in this other realm, in this other space of a really beautiful rum cask.
And
Yeah,
it carries.
Go ahead.
Sorry. It carries through a consistent deepness and richness from nose to palate to finish that is, one of the cornerstones of the McCarthy's Foundation is that nice depth and richness of character and flavor, with just the extra sprinklings of like the dry fruit on the palate, the almost like sea salt and lime zest, and that nice like dry crumbly shortbread with toasted coconut, and it is a nice cohesive, beautiful, flavorful dram, and it lingers with you just long enough.
The nose now for me is like lemon bars with like the shortbread included,
Ooh. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I get
can
on
get
board with
that.
that. I do love like pouring a glass and then like coming back to it after 15 or 20 minutes after it has a second to breathe. Like it's amazing how much that will change over time if just let to kind of air out for half a second. And you get this
Yeah.
kind of additional depth of flavor that like just wasn't jumping out of the glass at the first cork pop.
Yeah, speaking of like going on a journey, so I didn't prepare you with this segment at all, but this reminds me. Raymond, our friend from the Whiskey Lodge, who
Mhm.
just opened a bar in Shanghai, which is super cool. I had him over my house right after ACSA, and I was like, okay, you got to taste this, this rum cask McCarthy sample that I have. And his tasting process was so unique to me, where he was like, okay, I've tasted McCarthy's, right? And I've tasted this, and like they're different, but like they're the same. But like, let me just show you what I mean. And then he starts doing like this dance, right? Like he takes like a sip and he does this thing with his hand where he's like, mm, 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 like something like that. And I was
Mhm.
like, dude, that's unhinged, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yep. I have 100%, like Joseph can attest to this. Like when trying to explain the finish on something, like essentially just drawn a graph on a piece of paper, doing exactly that. Like, where does the finish
Mhm.
take you? And sometimes it's like it kind of goes up and then it goes really deep and then it comes back. Sometimes it doubles back and you get a loop to loop. It doubles back in and around itself before it comes out. And I've been like, this is what the finish is. And then he tastes it and he's like, yeah, that's what the finish is. Like that kind of that unique way that each brain can process input and the way that it can then translate it across all the different senses, like being able to graph out flavor, the flavor that you're experiencing, being able to describe it in tones and in the description of art or color. Like, you've had Anna on the podcast, so we've talked, everybody that's familiar with the Whiskey Lodge knows about synesthesia and how brains process information, but everybody has a little bit of it, and that, their brain tries to tell them in as many ways as possible what they're experiencing, and it's a little bit different for everybody.
By the way, you just saw me drinking out of the what was our name for it, Bill? Chunky McCarthy?
The McCarthy's.
The McCarthy's. Yeah, these were lovely gifts from Joseph O'Sullivan a couple of years ago to several of the admins of the Whiskey Lodge. And this is a double wide McCarthy's, which if you know anything about circles, double wide means that its volume went way up, right? So I think this holds like 16 ounces of whiskey or something like that.
Does it really? That's awesome.
So it's
We
really
do
just a
all of
rocks
our
glass with this
sampling
like
and
taper.
tasting notes in these snifters. So we've got a set of these snifters at the distillery. So just in an effort to, stay consistent and make it a little bit easier to funnel all that smell.
So what I'm doing right now is I just had a sip of the standard 6-year batch just to like calibrate on like what's different between that and the 6-year rum McCarthy's barrel pick. I don't have an answer yet. I'm just saying what I'm doing, right? That's my process.
Oh, so I can give you a really fun trick when you're going back and forth. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt your quiet moment. I learned it from a perfumery book. So when you're trying to figure out what the difference is between two things and you can't quite pull it out because there's so many different aromas to pull from, when your nose keeps smelling something, it will decide that you've smelled it enough and you'll go nose blind. And you guys do enough tasting that you know that one of the first things that your nose goes nose blind on is the smell of yourself. So to reset your nose when you find you can't smell anything out of the whiskey anymore, you can just smell your shirt, smell your arm. It will reset your nose, and then you'll be able to dig back into the glass and get back to recenter to be able to pull those finer details out. So you can use that to your advantage when you're trying to discern the difference between two samples, and that you can nose blind yourself on one sample. And then all of the things that are in that sample, your nose is not going to tell you when you go and smell the second sample. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And what's funny is like the 6-year doesn't smell normal to me right now because I've been smelling the 6-year rum cask for so long. And I'm like, this is having the opposite of the intended effect, because I'm actually like, I'm getting more different nuance out of the 6-year and not so much, because
all of the things that are just kind of part of the base liquid of McCarthy's, a 6-year-old aged McCarthy's, you've blinded yourself on.
So the difference that I can detect on a quick side by side is the standard 6-year release has more of the upper and mid range and a little bit less of the really low frequency. And the Rum McCarthy's is like if you've boosted the mids and then had a little bump towards the very low end of the bass frequencies.
Yeah. Well put. I like when we start talking about music levels when we're tasting notes.
Mhm.
There's so many different ways to approach a whiskey, right? The words are just the words, but the experience is like so much more subjective than that. And yet you can still feel the similarity from one sample to another on, say, McCarthy's, and you can feel maybe even similarities and differences between brands. And every time I have, there was, how do I want to put this? There was like, so I had an unlabeled sample, right, from the distillery. And like at one point in time, like Joseph knew what it was, but afterwards I asked him like, hey, which barrel was this? Right. And he like I don't know. Right. It was one of them. And I was like, okay, cool. So like, I'm going to taste more samples from the various barrels that I'm interested in and figure out which one this is. Right. And like, you can get a sense of it subjectively without having the tasting notes. Right. And actually Raymond's dance, that thing that he was doing, is like one of the ways that I sort of nailed it down. I was like, what journey does this whiskey take me on? Like, how does it traverse the levels? Like, what's the roller coaster, because like tasting notes was too hard. I was like, I know McCarthy's too well. And I'd be like, yes, this tastes like McCarthy's, but how is it different? Like, which one is it? What's its DNA? Right. And that dance, that roller coaster is what nailed it down for me. And I was finally convinced I know what sample this is, That's what happens when you're tasting the same barrel and a whole bunch of other barrels for 3 years,
And as we've been sitting here, this glass has been out now for about 20 minutes. It gets more and more like that. You get more and more of a sense of that roasted marshmallow and that toasted coconut. Like it just kind of starts to really float out of the glass.
Yeah, you're so right. It's gotten like coconut is like a weirdly floral thing if you don't think about it.
Oh, for sure. And with the number of fruits that are in this as well, like with the citrus component, as well as, the caramelized apricots, the apples, the jackfruit, everything else. There's even like a little bit of mango in it. Like there really is a parade of flavors going through, walking through the door into the living room. That's still the McCarthy's that we all know and love. Right. But now there's new host of characters on this special episode. That's it's going to be a hell of a sitcom episode. I'll tell you that for sure.
Yeah. The apple and the mango.
The hat with like all the fruit on it.
Yeah.
This is like McCarthy's wearing one of the fruit hats.
Sure. And then also wearing one of the fruit hats, but also slowly roasting a marshmallow over a nearby fire.
So much about this is like camping.
Oh, absolutely.
Like next to a
like you want to talk about a desert
fire.
island bottle. Like this is a desert island bottle if there ever has been one. Like in every description, like a bottle that I want to have, and also a bottle that is a desert island bottle.
Yeah, it's like it has so many faces, right? Like this is so hard to pin down. It goes between bright and it goes dark, and it like the fruits dance in, and it's like it's shiny and it's deep and boomy, and like there's just so many different characters that come out of this every time you go back for another sip,
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is so limited that I can't wait to buy my bottle, because I don't even get a bottle of this one. I'm gonna have to schlep to the store and get my own bottle, and I can guarantee you I will be buying more than one, because I need one for the library and I need one to share.
I've lost track of the number of bottles that I'm planning on buying, but it's at least 3, right? That's the beginning of everything, right? And first of all, 3. One to enjoy now liberally, one to enjoy later, and one to keep for the next great thing to come along as a comparison, because undoubtedly there will be newer, more interesting, maybe not more interesting, but newer, differently interesting things.
Oh, I don't know. You don't know what kind of tricks I have up my sleeve.
More interesting, older, the rocket ships, perhaps. Ooh. We're not fishing.
What is it? What did we talk about earlier? The angel face?
Yeah.
Nobody knows the trouble I'll be in.
But But for this one, there's a few other things too, right? Like I want to be able to give this as gifts liberally, even people who wouldn't buy it for themselves. I want to be able to like stash an archive bottle or two because this is my very first barrel pick, and this is super special to me. And and I really want to drive in on that point just a little bit. Joseph O'Sullivan is the first person I knew in the industry. He brought me under his wing, introduced me to a whole bunch of other people, went out of his way to get me samples for a barrel pick when I was basically a nobody, right? And I mean, relatively
You
speaking,
were never a
we're
nobody.
still-
You were always Doug.
Well, thank you very much. Even if we're a relatively small podcast, the team at Clear Creek has always made me feel large. It made me feel like, that there's something important here that, makes me feel like I matter, right? Like my voice in the industry matters. And being able to get this super special barrel and be able to put that out into the world as my very first single barrel offering, like I can't think of any brand in the world I would rather work more with on my first barrel pick. And I'm so glad that we finally made this happen. It's just like, it feels so surreal. And like, I almost want to party now, but I'm also like a little bit like, it's been so long until it's actually on store shelves. I feel a little nervous, like
it's going to be
happen.
so much fun to see the cascade of pictures that come in. Like, please, if you buy one of these bottles, tag the Clear Creek and the McCarthy's account. And if you feel like it, tag my account as well at the Bartlemay. And I'm sure Demi Tastes and Ranger's Respite also would love to be tagged, because it's going to be so much fun, not only to see the sales go through, but in the week and 10 days that it takes for the sales to get through, and then also the bottles to be packed up, shipped, and received. Like it's going to be so much fun to see all of your pictures once you get your bottles. So please make sure that you tag all of us if you can, because I'm looking forward to resharing all of them.
And speaking as sort of the representative of the Whiskey Lodge in this venue currently, Clear Creek has always been one of the biggest industry influences in the lodge. When Joe happened across the lodge and introduced himself and was talking to us, and then introduced us to Caitlin, it was the first, real contact that the lodge had with the industry. The first time that the lodge got to have a tour inside of an industry facility was at Clear Creek. We've gotten to know Caitlin and Joe and Caitlin's crew at Clear Creek through, getting to see the process, not just of making McCarthy's, but also all the other cool stuff that happens at Clear Creek. And the folks at the lodge couldn't be more honored than to be involved in this pick and to work with Clear Creek, because the connection is deep, and I don't think there's anybody else that the lodge could go with for our first barrel pick.
Well, I can tell you for one thing, let all of us, the whole crew, and Joseph, even though he's not still part of the Clear Creek crew, but he will always be a part of the Clear Creek family, and certainly my family as well. The kindness that you have shown just in letting us filthy producers into the lodge, but also in welcoming us into your arms and letting us participate and really honestly learn from you as well, because, we get so bogged down in making our own things that we forget about so many of the other beautiful things that are out there to try. And so it's wonderful to be able to talk with the consumers that are educated, that are excited, that want to know more, and are also as so open and willing to share about their experiences. So I want you guys to know that the feeling is absolutely mutual between the three of us here, but also the greater Clear Creek family and the Whiskey Lodge. Like, thank you guys so much for thinking of us so highly, for letting us into the lodge in the first place, and also for deciding that McCarthy's was going to be your first choice for a single barrel, because the honor is just as much mine.
I'm thinking about how we're going to cheers and sign off here, and I'm reminded of a theme here. In the very room that Bartlemay is in, Joseph once recorded a video of a trolley driving towards a bottle of McCarthy's and then popping up the word first, right? It's like, typical internet meme stuff, but like also playing on McCarthy's being the first American single malt. And here we are talking about our very first barrel pick. So I can't think of a better cheers than to say, here's to the first.
Absolutely. To the first.
Thank you, everybody.
Sláinte.
And thanks to everyone listening. Cheers. And until next time, we'll see you in the lodge. Good night.